Hello and welcome to another episode of First Act, the podcast where we dive into the inspirational origin stories of Australia's leading entrepreneurs, business owners and influencers. I'm one of your hosts, Sess Busby, and my fun fact for today is I love exploring ideas that challenge the status quo. So I think today's conversation is actually going to do a little bit of that, so I'm keen to jump right in.
And I'm Adam Bubb, your other host. My fun fact for today is, geez, you really made this hard for me, Sess. My best ideas that challenge the status quo come from rocking gently back and forth, talking to myself in a light hum, and listening to a playlist called Beatstrumentals on Apple Music. So basically, completely normal behavior. Is that all right? Does that cut it, Sess?
That does cut it. I don't know if you wanted to reveal that to everyone, but okay.
It's out there now. Well, you didn't reveal your idea that challenges status quo. What's one of yours?
I don't know that it particularly challenges the status quo, but I am always going to be a big believer in equity and equality, and one day we will achieve it, I hope.
Now that is the better answer. And I wish I said that. Yeah, what she said. That leads us quite nicely into our guest for today. She has made a profound impact on women's leadership, not just in Australia, but across the globe. From a high-paced corporate career to founding one of the world's fastest-growing women's leadership programs, she too loves to challenge the status quo.
Megan Dalla-Camina is an award-winning women's leadership expert, speaker and best-selling author, and her work is empowering and reshaping how women lead and succeed. But what led her to pivot from her successful corporate career to founding the Women Rising program, a program that's empowered more than 7,500 women in 63 countries? Well, we're about to find out. Welcome to the show, Megan.
Hi. Well, I was going to say welcome. It's so good to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we're so pleased to have you on the show today. As we've already hinted at, we're going to be talking about probably equality and leadership and all those kind of things. But before we dive into that, I'd like to take a little bit of a step back because, as we mentioned, you were a corporate high flyer for really quite some time. You're no stranger to that world. You were one of the youngest directors at PwC, you're a GM at IBM. So there's some pretty big names in your CV. What were the challenges that you faced when you were working for these big companies?
Oh gosh, such a good question. I think I had an 18-year corporate career, so I had different challenges at different stages, of course. Being I was at GE, was my first big corporate job. And it was in the time of e-commerce before e-business. I don't know if you remember back then, before IBM did e-business, right at the start of e-commerce and traveling the world. And, I used to commute from Sydney to Asia and back again, 3 weeks out, 1 week back. So that was a challenge. I think when I was a director at PwC and then going into IBM, when IBM bought the consulting business of PwC post Enron, and all of the firms had to separate. And I was a young executive, a single mum to a very young child, trying to do my first master's degree and just trying to figure out how do you put all the things together. One of the big questions I always had before I started doing all of the work for gender equality and women's leadership was my own question of how do you, as a woman, follow the career that you want, do the work that you're passionate about, and do the lifelong juggle, raise children and pursue things that you're passionate about. So they were challenges. And then I think the big challenge that I had when I was about 35, when I was at IBM, and I completely burnt out. I had been running on that treadmill for pretty much a decade. And I hit the wall so much so that I quit my job. I'd worked my whole career to become the director of marketing at a big company. And I got there and I just couldn't sustain the work. And that was a long time ago now, but that really sparked the next sort of 15 years of my life.
So like kind of a couple of things I'd like to unpack there. Like you talk about being a young mom and working in these big corporate environments. How do you think the structure and the way that those businesses are set up were kind of barriers to you as a woman? And you said like 18 years to get to the pinnacle of what you wanted and then you burnt out. What could have been done to better support you?
Yeah, look, I think back then, I mean, I've been out of corporate for 11 years and it's been almost 20 years since my burnout. And I think back then we didn't have the any of the conversations that we're having today. So, in some ways we haven't progressed as far as we need to in terms of gender equality, but the workplaces have progressed for sure. Back then we didn't really work flexibly. We didn't talk about the challenges of managing being working mothers really the way that we do now, or working parents for all genders and the challenges. It was a much more rigid, traditional workplace. We weren't having conversations about authentic leadership and how women can show up authentically and lead with a mix of feminine and masculine traits that apply to all genders. So much of the conversation of what I was dealing with back then has progressed, even if a lot of the data in terms of balance hasn't progressed as fast as we would have hoped.
How did those personal experiences in traditionally really male dominated corporate environments, in those corporate environments, how did that kind of shape where you've started to take your mission?
Yeah, it shaped it a lot. I mean, I worked in tech for a lot of my career, and tech, I mean, back then it was 70-30, and unfortunately now it's still about 70-30, 70% men, 30% women.
It's shocking, isn't it?
It's shocking. The data really, in some ways it's shifted, but in a lot of ways, like when we look at the pure numbers in and sectors like tech, it's still very much what it was.
Mm.
And for me, after I had my burnout and came back, that really sort of set me on this mission around how do we make work better? How do we make it better for women? Because I believe when we make work better for women, we make it better for all genders, including for men, right? Of course. And I do a lot of work with men and male allies. So that really started me on that path of what does leadership look like? What does authentic leadership look like? What are we doing around gender diversity? And how do we progress the conversation so that we can get to a different place for all of us? And again, in some ways we have, and in a lot of ways we haven't, which has led me to the work that I do now with Women Rising.
Some of it is there's genuine change and you can see it happening before your eyes. Other things are very performative out there in the corporate worlds. For you personally, what was the aha moment that led you to start Women Rising? Can you pinpoint any kind of, every founder seems to have this sort of story where it's like, it hit me like lightning, or I was in the shower, or I was having a beer somewhere and I
Yes.
thought, what could I do here? What
Quite
contribution
often on the beach, Adam.
on the
You've
beach?
had a few on the beach.
Had a few on the beach with the beer.
For me, I guess I have all my best ideas in the shower and at the beach. For me, it was Women Rising we're in our fourth year. But it's really the culmination of 15 years of work and different iterations. And coming out of corporate, I left corporate. I was head of strategy at IBM. I was also, as part of that job, was head of gender diversity. Like, it was a big job. It was a high profile job. And it was a big step to leave that safe corporate role, especially as a single mother with financial responsibility for my son. But I kept looking around and there was no next role. There was no other role that I wanted, and I really wanted to coach and teach and speak in the women's leadership space. So I did that for many, many years before Women Rising was born. And it was those first kind of 7 years of my entrepreneurial journey, working out what worked, working out what was required, following and picking up the breadcrumbs on my purposeful path around writing books and coaching women and running workshops and all of those things we do as business owners, to not only work out where's the revenue, but also how does that align with the things that I'm most passionate about. And after doing that and teaching thousands of women for those 7 years, that's when I really came to Women Rising and finally put all the pieces of what I'd been doing and teaching and learning and researching into the model that now is the Women Rising program. And that for me was that when you just have that moment when you create something or you build something and you go, this is the thing, like this is the thing that's going to break through. That was the moment for me.
So you talked about the little breadcrumbs that were along the way of your career, and you spoke about how within those big corporations you had roles across a number of areas in the leadership team, gender diversity, making sure the culture was going well. How does all of those learnings, how did they kind of align to come together to make the elements of what Women Rising is now?
I talk about what I do as this fusion of different sciences from my academic research, from all of my personal experience, as you say, from all of those roles in those countries and companies, and then the experience of the women that I teach, their lived experience, everything that I've learned from coaching, teaching probably more than 10,000 women now over the last 10 years. And how that's alchemized all of that, everything I saw in my corporate days, everything I personally experienced on my own journey through all of the stages of my personal journey, it has really come into this alchemy of the models and the frameworks that I teach. And I think that's why they cut through, because when you look at things from all of the different lenses, I think you can come up with something really unique and insightful.
So, how important is then that mindset and psychology element as well, and providing support? Given you're someone who's experienced burnout as well, and I think a lot of women in the workforce do have the majority of that caregiving role, whether they want it or not. It seems to fall to them. So, how has that influenced what you do as well with Women Rising? How do you kind of bring that into your teaching, that sort of care for self as well?
It's incredibly important. And that holistic nature is right at the core of everything that we do. The first thing that I did when I came out of my burnout, when I got on the other side of it, was I went and did my yoga and meditation teacher training, not because I ever wanted to teach, but because I wanted to learn. And after that, I did a master's of wellness and positive psychology because, again, like I was trying to find the pieces. How does our mental well-being, our physical well-being, our emotional well-being, our spiritual well-being provide that self-care, nourishment, grounding, spaciousness that we get when we do that to be able to sustain the journey? And back then it was to sustain my corporate career and my role as a mum to a young child. And now as an entrepreneur, like how do you build that grit and that grace? So I think the well-being piece, all aspects of the well-being, and for women to learn how to prioritize that, because we're always so busy taking care of all the people and doing all of the things, is really for me the foundation of everything else that we do at Women Rising and that I do personally.
I have a very special woman in my life, in my family. She has a son, she's a single mum, or a solo parent, as we like to call her. And she's also a teacher and is constantly feels like she's giving to students and then to her son, but then kind of juggle that balance of being able to go, what my well-being is important. When you look back on your experiences, especially in kind of those days when you really feel like you're in the trenches, how did that influence your approach to leadership and well-being now?
When I was back in my corporate career, certainly until the last couple of years when I was doing all of this inner work, I didn't have the tools. Like all of the things that I teach now really stemmed from my journey, but also so many other women's journeys where we just didn't know. I didn't understand the challenges in the environment, didn't understand the tools or have the space or even the permission to take care of ourselves. I think we're still seeing such an epidemic level of burnout amongst women, professional women. And there's the permission piece, there's the where's the space piece, and then there's what do I do? How do I do, like your friend, how do I do all of those things and take care of my child and be the teacher and take care of the students? Where's me in that equation? And how do I make that work? And that was a long part of my journey. And it's a long part of the journey for the women that I teach around like finding the moments. And then what are the things that are going to work for you? Is it 5 minutes of meditation? Is it standing out? I stand out on the street in breaks because it's the only place I get sunshine. I just stand there, right, on the pavement. People must think I'm nuts. And I get some sunshine. Is it going for a walk? what is it that you can do for yourself, and where are you going to put that in? And how do we shrink that change so that it's not overwhelming? Because I see for so many women, we don't think about the 5 minutes. We think that we need an hour to really do something for our well-being, and it's not true. So that's a big part of the work, I think, for us, is giving yourself permission to do it, finding the space, making the space, and shrinking the change.
Well, certainly you've already managed to impact a lot of women. I think at the top of the show, we mentioned 7,500 women already going through the Women Rising program and getting the benefits of this great advice. So what is it that you think like sets your Women Rising apart from other kind of support network growth programs?
There's amazing things out there on offer now. When I look back to where I was in my corporate days, I think it was few and far between. There's so many amazing tools and programs and information now for women. What we love and what we get told about Women Rising is a couple of things. Number one, it's fully virtual. So we have women in 63 countries from hundreds and hundreds of organizations. It's really accessible. The curriculum is this evidence-based holistic journey. So usually if you are doing career or leadership development, you're straight into it, like career, where's your career plan, all of the pieces can be quite dry. We start with life vision. Like, what's the vision that you have for your life? Where do you find meaning? What's your purpose? And then we move to confidence, career, leadership, etc. And that integrative approach, where we're looking at our whole lives, not just trying to pick out, oh, this is my career piece, let's just go look at that. That's really effective. And then also the community and the coaching. Like, it's not enough to consume. We consume all day, every day, all of us. So the curriculum plus the coaching plus the community and the very diverse community that we serve makes it a really rich experience for women.
You also offer rich experiences for men, for male allies. You have a male allies program. I'm a proud ally myself. I'd love to do your program. It sounds great. What do you tell us about that, and why do you believe male allyship is crucial for achieving gender equality in the workplace?
Yes, we love working with men as allies. I've been getting asked for many years from men, and here's what they say: I want to be part of the change for gender diversity. I want to do a better job of supporting women, but I don't know what to do, or I'm worried about doing the wrong thing. 77% of men say they want to be part of the change. 60% of men post the Me Too movement are scared. Like, they're scared of doing the wrong thing. They don't want to get in trouble. They don't want to get cancelled. They don't want to offend anybody. So a lot of men are sort of standing on the sidelines and not quite sure, certainly in an organizational environment. So we created the Male Allies program to bring men into this journey for gender equality and to, number one, give them a safe space to have those conversations of what do I do and what do I say in this situation and what support can I provide here. And I always talk about men going from being a good guy to being an active male ally. And what we see from men coming into our program work is they come in thinking they're male allies, and what they quickly realize is they're good guys and they've got great intentions, but they don't yet have the language, the frameworks, the tools to take that male ally action. And when they start doing that, when we start having those coaching conversations and they're getting the lessons and the materials, they can very quickly start taking action that has a massive impact, whether that's at home in their families and also, of course, in their teams and their workplaces, which is what we see.
It's such important work. We'll be back with more from Megan after this short break.
Megan, a little change of pace now. I would quite like to touch base around your book, which is also called Women Rising, coincidentally. I think there's no coincidence there, but anyway. Now, in the book, you talk about external paradoxes and internal narratives and how they impact women and hold them back. So just for our listeners' purposes, could you dive into that a little bit more? What are these external narratives? What are the inner critic voices that are stopping us from doing what we were really born to do, or what we can really achieve?
Yes, well framed up. What I'm looking at in the book, and you said it beautifully, the first part is around what I call the paradoxes of power. And these are the things, these are the forces externally that can hold women back. And the reason I really dove into this so deeply is because when you look at the world, when you look at the data, so much of the conversation we have is why haven't things changed more than they have for women, particularly in the workplace, but also in society? When we look at so much of the entrenched bias that exists and the patriarchal constructs, the gender constructs, gender bias, etc., why are we still here? Which is what so many organizations are still grappling with. Like, we've done all the things. We've got targets and hiring panels and succession planning and employee resource groups. Why aren't we seeing the shift? And through all of my research and work, I've distilled these 6 paradoxes of power that I hope for people are going to make sense of why we're still here and help women and male allies really understand what are these forces and how do they impact women. So they're things like the empowerment paradox. Like, we expect women to be empowered in systems that disempower them, and all of the systemic issues and biases that still exist for women today. Things like the motherhood paradox and the pressure that women face, that women are expected to work like they don't have children and parent like they don't have a job outside the home. And how does that come together? And we wonder why women feel like that they can never win. The leadership paradox of women getting told, we want you to lead. We want you to be a leader in organizations. But when they do, or in politics, government, society, community, but when women do show up and lead in their authentic leadership style, they get told, no, we want you to lead, but not like that. We want you to fit inside the box of what the ideal leader looks like, which traditionally has been masculine and male. And there's others, the confidence paradox, the success paradox, and the visibility paradox. So in that first part of the book, I'm really unpacking that. What does this look like? Where does it come from? How does it impact women at work? And of course, what do we do about that? Because I find that when we can understand, particularly women can understand, oh, these are the forces outside of me that may be holding me back or restricting my progress, women realize very clearly that it's not just them. Because I hear that from thousands and thousands of women, that any challenge that they have in their life, their career, their business, their confidence, their visibility, that they're the problem. And once they start to see these paradoxes of power, they get to take more agency back, because it's not just them, it's actually all of us, because we all live in the water. We're the fish swimming in the water. So that's the whole first part. And then the second part is, what are our stories that keep us stuck? So there are these external forces, and then there's the internal forces. And the internal force takes the shape of the inner critic, which we all have. All genders have an inner critic. It's part of the way our brains are wired. But for women, what I'm delving into here are the 13 archetypes of the inner critic, like the perfectionist, the people pleaser, the ideal mother, the empath, the comparer, the beauty queen. What are the specific lenses of the inner critic, so that women can do the work to look at that and see what is their flavor, what are their stories, and therefore what is the action they can take to reclaim their power and move through their inner critic, so that they can do what they want to do, be the leader, the mother, the partner, have the life and the purposeful career that they want.
That's such an interesting approach, because we're often sort of told, oh, okay, if you're doubting yourself, and I think, yeah, I can't speak on behalf of women. I'm sure a lot of women feel that if you're doubting yourself, you're just told, oh, work harder, or do this or do that, and just. But I think that is it's a revelation to be able to kind of identify that there are many different types of internal critics, whether you are of any gender, that these inner critics are these different kinds. They take different shapes and forms. In terms of the strategies to combat them, can you give us just like a bit of a glimpse at or an example of a kind of strategy for a particular kind of inner critic that one might have?
The first thing with the inner critic is to recognize the stories that you are telling yourself. So, for example, when we look at confidence, the research definition that I love the most about confidence is the ability to turn our thoughts into action. And the piece that stops us in the middle are the stories, right? That inner critic that's telling us not to do the thing. So if you're someone who wants to start a business or create a new offering in your business, but you don't take that action, we need to tune into the story. What's the story you're telling yourself? I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. I don't have the money. No one's going to buy from me. Yep. Everybody's done it before me. All of those, they're all stories. So the first step is start to recognize and tune into and write down what are the stories that you're telling. And the best way to get tuned into that is if everyone thought back for the last 2 weeks or 4 weeks when they didn't take an action that they really wanted to take, what were the stories they were telling themselves? So that's part one. The second part is we have to interrupt the cognitive dissonance that we have. And the best and quickest way that we know how to do that is just to ask yourself the question, is that true? Once you know the story, oh, no one's going to buy from me in my business story, interrupt that cognitive dissonance pattern. Is that true? And you go and look for the evidence of whether that is true, whether that is not true, so that you can then get to step 3, which is reframe that story into action. And all of the inner critic archetypes have different stories. They have different patterns. They're shaped by different things that have happened in our lives, in society, in culture. And they all have different narratives and different stories. So what we do in the book is work through them. Yeah. How do you understand that inner critic? If you're the perfectionist, how do you really understand what that looks like? What are the stories that you're telling yourself? What's the light side and the shadow side of that? And then what are the strategies that you can take to start moving through that particular flavor of the archetype as the perfectionist or the comparer, the overachiever, the beauty queen, whatever it is for you?
You must have definitely made friends with your inner critic, given the success of Women Rising. It's been pretty phenomenal rise, to go from nothing to a multi-7-figure business in such a short period. But it kind of been without challenges. What were the big learnings for you along the way?
In my business, oh gosh, so many. I think starting and running a business is the ultimate self-development journey. Like it's, as many of your listeners, will know. I think for this phase of my journey with Women Rising, the last 4 years, going from zero as ed tech startup through to now we're in scale up phase. Number one, testing the concept, like testing the model right at that startup phase and like knowing it was going to work. We did that quite quickly. We did a pilot. We tested it across many organizations and many different, types of women. Going from that to then, okay, where's the growth? Where are we going to find the growth in a really busy marketplace globally for this particular offering? And how do we scale that? Was a challenge. Resourcing. I think resourcing for small business. When I started Women Rising, really there was me plus one plus our tech lead. So really tiny, super lean team. One of my biggest challenges as a founder has been to know when do I invest in people, because I'm a bootstrap business, no external funding. And when do you make those investments? And which roles do you invest in? And how do you get ahead of the growth that's coming and how you're building the business, but not too far ahead because of the risk factor in that. So they've been some of my biggest challenges.
One question that's just it's just sprung up while we've just been chatting. Finding customers and finding the people who really need your program, that would be something that any business owner, whatever product or service that you're selling, is one of the most challenging things. We do audience surveys on Koshi's Business Builders and our sister website, Startup Daily. Number one, finding new customers is one of the things that is the thing that people say is the biggest struggle. When you're thinking about the kinds of people, you'd obviously have a certain pipeline of people that come to you, but often these companies that need to make the biggest change can be held back by people who are not willing or not open to it. So how do you convince them that women rising is actually super important to their future?
Yeah, I mean, you're spot on, right? For all of us as business owners, like, where are the clients? Where are the clients, and how do you bring them on that journey? We've had different phases of that. The first phase was really around our corporate partners. So we had a number of really important clients who, had their people in the program and then started telling other companies. And we had one particular incredible partner in Microsoft who just galvanized the program out to their partners and their customers. And that was really a massive part of our initial growth, and just word of mouth. We did no advertising. I didn't have a salesperson. It was kind of me. And it was really that word of mouth and the women in the program telling other women, going back into their organizations, advocating to get more women on the program. That was really the first 3 years of our growth. We're now moving into a different phase as we go into scale up, which is, as you say, how do you then go and expand that reach and have those conversations? We've taken a little bit of a non-traditional path in leadership development and career development, where we haven't gone through HR as our primary client. We've tried to find the advocates. Like, I've tried to find people in businesses who are really passionate about the work, passionate about gender equality, passionate now about male allyship, passionate about shifting the needle and really moving the needle finally on gender diversity. And those people have been our biggest advocates for the work that we're doing, and still absolutely.
So speaking of big advocates, Telstra Best of Business Awards,
Yeah.
they are very, very big advocates of you. You won the Best of Business for Accelerating Women, I believe.
Yes.
So what does that kind of recognition mean for you personally, and also for your brand, particularly at this point of time where you're trying to really scale up women rising?
Yeah, that was such an interesting process. I've never been one for awards ever in my corporate career, in my business, but the team really wanted to do it. They really, wanted to do it, and we love Telstra and have so much respect for the award. So, we went through the process. We were blessed enough to win that award. I think the most important thing that we got out of that was the process we went through. And I think anyone who's ever been through an award process will say, I've heard it from so many people, that the deep dive that you have to do to be out, it's a very, very rigorous process. The Telstra Awards, for anyone who's been through it will know, like, it is months and months and months and volumes of data and pitching and all of the things. I think we learned so much in that process about who we are, our vision, our mission, our values, the growth, thinking about the next phase of the growth. And then, of course, there's the external. So that on its own, that internal process was incredible. The people that you meet through that Telstra Awards process from different categories and the innovation is remarkable. And then, of course, yes, the external recognition that you've been through something like 27,000 companies and come out as the winner is incredible recognition. Yeah, we were very humbled. Yeah, it was quite incredible.
Yeah, well,
Thank
congratulations. Well
you.
deserved.
Thank you.
Yeah, these awards are so helpful because they can really put you in front of a whole lot of people who hadn't heard of you, and all of their clients and their customers and that word of mouth, that domino effect, really just expands, and it can be so helpful for businesses to actually put in the time when it comes to those award submissions, or you can also pay someone to help you with an award submission to, so all of those things are super
Yes.
important.
Next time we might
Yeah.
might go that route. As a small team, I don't think we knew what we were getting ourselves into when we started the process, and we got like to stage 3 and we're like, "Oh my gosh, really? Like we're still going?" But
Yeah.
it was worth it in the end.
So as you release your 4th book, what are your hopes for the impact of women rising, on all genders globally?
Yes, you really think about that as an author. I mean, my vision for this book is that this book gets into the hands of 1 million women and helps them claim their power, helps them really understand all of those external forces and paradoxes that are at play, things that have nothing to do with them but impact how they show up in the world and impact how they feel about themselves and what they think about themselves and what they believe is possible for their lives, for their careers, for their families, for their communities, and that they start to really understand what is within their control, those stories, their inner critic that can hold them back, and how to use the tools that I talk about in part 3 to create the future that they want for themselves, whatever that is, whether it's really small, whether it's the biggest, grandest vision that they have, it doesn't matter, it's theirs. And to really tap into that and fully stand in their power. And that it would be incredible if we had 1 million men who read this book. There's a whole section in there for the men, and could better understand not only women's lived experience, theirs as well. Because when men start to really understand and see the patriarchal forces at play, how men think about themselves changes. How men get caught up and restricted by masculine modes and masculine gender norms changes. And then everything changes for everybody, right? When everybody can be free of those patriarchal constructs and norms. So, yeah, I have a pretty big vision.
I love what you're saying there, because it's kind of saying that no matter what gender you are, no matter how you identify, it's about kind of freeing ourselves from the shackles that hold us back.
That's exactly right.
It's the eternal search, really, like where we all go in our identities,
Yeah.
try and battle that inner critic and
Yeah.
use and find strategies to deal with that. Where can people find out more about Women Rising, both the program and the book, and all of the work that you do?
Yeah, so megandallacamina.com is my online home. Womenrisingbook.com is the easiest URL for the book. And I'm on socials everywhere at Megan Dalla-Camina. So there's only one of me, I think. So yeah, we'd love to connect with everybody.
Although if you could clone yourself, imagine how much you could do,
Oh my
Megan.
gosh. Oh, if we all could, would that just not be amazing? Yeah, can science just go figure that out quickly, please? Maybe AI will, well, we will all be cloned. I mean, watch this space.
Oh, equity in AI.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
know, we need to be
yes.
careful.
We look, I mean, don't get me started on that. I'm all for technology, but there's some scary stuff happening out there around AI. That's a whole other conversation.
All right, perhaps for another day then.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much, Megan. It's been fantastic having you on the show today. I think that's pretty much all we've got time for, I'm afraid.
Thank you both so much. Great conversation.
Megan, thank you so much. And a big thank you to our listeners. Thank you for tuning into First Act. We love making it. We honestly do. Be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and tell all your friends. Let's talk about that domino effect, word of mouth. We love word of mouth. We want more first actors in our community. And join us next time for more inspiring stories from Australia's finest entrepreneurs and influencers. Bye for now.